Text 1. The case against high school sports. The United States routinely spends more tax dollars per high school athlete than per high school math student, unlike most countries worldwide. And we wonder why we lag in international education rankings? By Amanda Ripley. The following is a section from an article that appeared in The Atlantic magazine in September 2013. Amanda Ripley is an investigative journalist for Time magazine and a senior fellow at the New American Foundation, which is a nonpartisan research think tank based in Washington, D.C. She's the author of The Smartest Kids in the World and How They Got That Way, 2013. Every year, thousands of teenagers move to the United States from all over the world for all kinds of reasons. They observe everything in their new country with fresh eyes, including basic features of American life that most of us never stop to consider. One element of our education system consistently surprises them. Sports are a big deal here, says Jenny, who moved to America from South Korea with her family in 2011. Shawnee High, her public school in southern New Jersey, fields teams in 18 sports over the course of the school year, including golf and bowling. Its campus has lush grass fields, 6 tennis courts, and an athletic hall of fame. They have days when teams dress up in Hawaiian clothes or pajamas just because we're the soccer team, Jenny says. To protect the privacy of Jenny and other students in this story, only their first names are used. By contrast, in South Korea, whose 15-year-olds rank 5th in the world, behind Shanghai, Singapore, and Hong Kong, in a 2012 test of critical thinking and math, Jenny's classmates played pickup soccer on a dirt field at lunchtime. They brought badminton rackets from home and pretended there was a net. If they made it into the newspaper, it was usually for their academic accomplishments. Sports are embedded in American schools in a way they are not almost anywhere else. Yet this difference hardly ever comes up in domestic debates about America's international mediocrity in education. The U.S. ranks 36 on the same 2012 international math test. The challenges we do talk about are real ones, from undertrained teachers to entrenched poverty. But what to make of this other glaring reality, and the signal it sends to children, parents, and teachers about the very purpose of school? When I surveyed about 200 former exchange students last year, in cooperation with an international exchange organization called AFS, 9 out of 10 foreign students who had lived in the U.S. said that kids here cared more about sports than their peers back home did. A majority of Americans who'd studied abroad agreed. Even in 8th grade, American kids spend more than twice the time Korean kids spend playing sports, according to a 2010 study published in the Journal of Advanced Academics. In countries with more holistic, less hard-driving education systems than Korea's, like Finland and Germany, many kids play club sports in their local towns, outside of school. Most schools do not staff, manage, transport, insure, or glorify sports teams because, well, why would they? When I was growing up in New Jersey, not far from where Jenny lives now, I played soccer from age 7 to 17. I was relieved to find a place where girls were not expected to sit quietly or look pretty, and I still love the game. Like most other Americans, I can rattle off many benefits of high school sports: exercise, lessons in sportsmanship and perseverance, school spirit, and just plain fun. All of those things matter, and Jenny finds it refreshing to attend a school that is about so much more than academics. But as I've traveled around the world visiting places that do things differently and get better results, I've started to wonder about the trade-offs we make. Nearly all of Jenny's classmates at Shawnee are white, and 95% come from middle or upper-income homes. But in 2012, only 17% of the school's juniors and seniors took at least one advanced placement test, compared with the 50% of students who played school sports. As states and districts continue to slash education budgets, as more kids play on traveling teams outside of school, and as the globalized economy demands that children learn higher order skills so they can compete down the line, it's worth reevaluating the American sporting tradition If sports were not central to the mission of American high schools, then what would be? Let's take a moment to pause and go back to the graph up above. It reads like this. The bar graph below compares rankings of students from the United States to their international counterparts. It summarizes data from 2012 gathered by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, an international group whose mission is stated on its website as, quote, to promote policies that will improve the economic and social well-being of people around the world. The bar graph title reads, U.S. students lag behind international peers. In tests of reading, math, and science, U.S. 15-year-olds were outperformed by many of their counterparts in Asia and Europe, in some cases placing below the international average. In reading, the U.S. ranked 24th. In 2012, in math, they ranked 36th. And in science in 2012, 15-year-olds ranked 28. Back to the article, starting on line 88. In many schools, sports are so entrenched that no one, not even the people in charge, realize their actual cost. When Marguerite Rosa, the author of Educational Economics, analyzed the finances of one public high school in the Pacific Northwest, she and her colleagues found that the school was spending $328 for math instruction and more than 4 times that much for cheerleading, $1,348 a cheerleader. And is not even a school in a district that prioritizes cheerleading, Rosa wrote. In fact, the district's strategic plan has for the past 3 years claimed that math was the primary focus. Many sports and other electives tend to have lower student-to-teacher ratios than math and reading classes, which drives up the cost. And contrary to what most people think, ticket and concession sales do not begin to cover the cost of sports in a vast majority of high schools or colleges. Football is, far and away, the most expensive high school sport. Many football teams have half a dozen or more coaches, all of whom typically receive a stipend. Some schools hire professional coaches at full salaries, or designate a teacher as a full-time athletic director. New bleachers can cost $500,000, about the same as artificial turf. Even maintaining a grass field can cost more than $20,000 a year. Reconditioning helmets, a ritual that many teams pay for every year, can cost more than $1,500 for a large team. Some communities collect private donations or levy a special tax to fund new school sports facilities. Over the past few years, budget cuts have forced more school districts, from Florida to Illinois, to scale back on sports programs. But in most of these places, even modest cuts to athletics are viewed as temporary and tragic sacrifices, not as necessary adaptations to new reality. Many schools have shifted more of the cost of athletics to parents rather than downsized programs. Others have cut basic academic costs to keep their sports programs intact. Officials in Pasco County, Florida, have considered squeezing athletic budgets for each of the past 6 years. They've so far agreed to cut about 700 education jobs, and they extended winter break in 2011, but sports have been left mostly untouched. In these communities, the dominant argument is usually that sports lure students into school and keep them out of trouble. The same argument American educators have made for more than half a century, and it remains relevant, without a doubt, for some small portion of students. But at this moment in history, now that more than 20 countries are pulling off better high school graduation rates than we are, with mostly nominal athletic offerings, using sports to tempt kids into getting an education feels dangerously old-fashioned. America has not found a way to dramatically improve its children's academic performance over the past 50 years. But other countries have, and they're starting to reap the economic benefits. Andreas Schleicher, a German education scientist at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, has visited schools all over the world, and is an authority on different regional approaches to education. I profiled Sleekler in this magazine in 2011. He's wary of the theory that sports can encourage sustained classroom engagement. Our analysis suggests that the most engaging environment you can offer students is one of cognitive challenge combined with individualized pedagogical support, he told me in an email. If you offer boring and poor math instruction and try to compensate that with interesting sports activities, you may get students interested in sports, but I doubt it will do much good to their engagement with school. Imagine, for a moment, if Americans transferred our obsessive intensity about high school sports, the rankings, the trophies, the ceremonies, the pride, to high school academics. We would look not so different from South Korea or Japan or any of a handful of Asian countries whose hyper-competitive pressure cooker approach to academics in many ways mirrors the American approach to sports. Both approaches can be dysfunctional. Both set kids up for stress and disappointment. The difference is that 93% of South Korean students graduate from high school, compared with just 77% of American students, only about 2% of whom receive athletic scholarships to college. As it becomes easier and more urgent to compare what kids around the world know and can do, more schools may follow Premont's lead. Basis public charter schools, located in Arizona, Texas, and Washington, D.C., are modeled on rigorous international standards. They do not offer tackle football. The founders deemed it too expensive and all-consuming. Still, basis schools offer other cheaper sports, including basketball and soccer. Anyone who wants to play can play. No one has a tryout. Arizona's mainstream league is costly to join, so Basic Tucson North belongs to an alternative league that costs less and requires no long-distance travel, meaning students rarely miss class for games. Athletes who want to play at an elite level do so on their own, through club teams, not through school. Basis teachers channel the enthusiasm usually found on football fields into academic conquests. On the day of advanced placement exams, students at Basis Tucson North file into the classroom to Eye of the Tiger, the Rocky III theme song. In 2012, 15-year-olds at 2 Arizona basis schools took a new test designed to compare individual schools' performances with that of schools from around the world. The average basis student not only outperformed the typical American student by nearly 3 years in reading and science and by 4 years in math, but outscored the average student in Finland, Korea, and Poland as well. The basis kid did better even than the average student from Shanghai, China, the region that ranks number 1 in the world. I actually believe that sports are extremely important, Olga Block, a basis co-founder, told me. The problem is that once sports become important to the school, they start colliding with academics.